Yamunatiravanachariram Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Jaya Krishna Rukmini Jaya Satyabhama Krishna Rukmini Jaya Satyabhama Jaya Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya.
Srimad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Stottar Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Vishwaguru A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Srimad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Stottar Sata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्भागवतम की जय। श्री श्री कृष्ण रुक्मिणी सत्यभामा की जय। श्री श्री गौरनिताय की जय। विश्वगुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, The Son of Drona Punished, verse number 8. Sa samhitam bhagavatim sa samhitam bhagavatim sa samhitam bhagavatim kritva anukramya cha atmajam कृत्वानुक्रम्य चात्मजं कृत्वानुक्रम्य चात्मजं शुकम् अध्यापयाम आस शुकमध्यापयामास शुकमध्यापयामास निवृत्ति निरतं मुनिः निवृत्तिनिरतं मुनिः निवृत्तिनिरतं मुनिः Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmajam Sukamadhyapayamasa Nivrittinaраtam Munihi Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmajam Sukamadhyapayamasa Nivrittinaраtam Munihi
Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritva Anukramya Chatmajam Sukam Adhyapayamasa Nivritti Niratam Munihi. Sasamhitam Bhagavatim
Sukamadhyapayamasa Nivritti Niratam Munihi.
Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmajam Sukam Adhyapayamasa Nivritti Niratam Munihi.
Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmajam Shukam Adhyapayam Asa Nivritti Niratam Munihi.
Saha, that Samhitam, Vedic literature, Bhagavatim, in relation with the personality of Godhead, Kritva, having done, Anukramya, by correction and repetition, Cha, and Atmajam, his own son, Shukam, Shukadeva Goswami, Adhyapayam Asa, taught, Nivritti, path of self-realization, Niratam, engaged, Munihi, the sage. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad-Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Kindly repeat. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad-Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras compiled by the same author. This Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is meant for those who are already engaged in self-realization. Srimad-Bhagavatam is so made that one becomes at once engaged in the path of self-realization simply by hearing the topics. Although it is especially meant for the Paramahamsas or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification, but even such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Sukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth, and his father taught him Srimad-Bhagavatam. Amongst mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of compilation of Srimad-Bhagavatam. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of King Parikshit and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit was ruling the world as the king of Bharatavarsha, he chastised the personality of Kali. According to revealed scriptures and astrological calculation, the age of Kali is in its 5000th year. Therefore, Srimad-Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5000 years ago. Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad-Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. That is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad-Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under instruction of Narada. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivritti Marga. The path of Pravritti Marga was condemned by Narada. That path is the natural inclination for all conditioned souls. The theme of Srimad-Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease of the human being, or stopping completely the pangs of material existence. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prayasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mokam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Mande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Sorry. In Vrindavan, it is a common practice to go on parikram of Vrindavan Dham on every Ekadashi and multiple other occasions, but Ekadashi is a standard feature. If you go to Vrindavan on Ekadashi day, you will find thousands of people doing parikram. The whole parikram marg is about 10-11 kilometers, takes about almost 2 hours approximately, depending on the speed at which you walk to complete the parikram. So when I used to be in Vrindavan, this was between 2005 and 2018. Whenever I would get the opportunity on Ekadashi day, I would also go for parikram. Of course, in the initial stages before the temple came up, every Ekadashi, Vyompad Prabhu and I, we would go for parikram. Sometimes Anjali Mataji used to be there, she would also accompany. Sometimes other brahmachari who was there, he would also accompany. So we used to regularly go for Vrindavan parikrama. But after the temple came up, of course, the temple program became more important, so we would go for parikram little later in the day. So later in the day means if it is summer season, you cannot go. It will become too hot, and you have to do parikram barefoot. So during the cooler seasons, say between October and February, we could go morning 9 a.m., 10 a.m., after finishing 11 a.m. around that time. So we were doing parikram. And along the way of the Vrindavan parikram, you come across many temples, many mutts, ashrams, and things like that. So we were crossing one ashram, and some pravachan was going on inside. Vrindavan, you know, always some pravachan or some activity will always be going on related to Krishna and all that. And this pravachan was going on inside the ashram. Outside they had put a loudspeaker. And so whatever pravachan was going on inside was being heard outside also. So while we were walking along, passing that ashram, I could hear a little bit of the pravachan that was going on. He was talking in Hindi. And very briefly, just when we crossed that ashram for a few seconds, I could hear. So whoever was the speaker, I don't know who is the speaker, because as I said, the lecture was going on within the ashram walls. And outside there was only the speaker, only the voice was heard. So whoever the speaker was, he was saying that we have to perform bhakti to Krishna, we have to do service, devotional service to Krishna. And eventually, by doing bhakti, you have to come to the stage of jnana. And only when you come to the stage of jnana, your spiritual life will be fulfilled, and things like that. So, you will see in Vrindavan Dham, which is the place of pastimes of Krishna, there will be people who will be talking about devotional service also as the highest, ultimate perfection of life. Like local Brajavasis, if you go and speak to them, they will tell about one pastime. The pastime they speak of in Brajabhasha, they tell, Shri Krishna Rukmani Satyabhama ki jai. Mukti, the Brajabhasha, they speak about this pastime, that Mukti goes to Krishna and asks Krishna that everyone gets Mukti, but what about my deliverance? Mukti herself is asking Krishna. And Kana Bole, Krishna responds. What does Krishna say? Braj Raj Mastak me pavo, Swayam Mukti Mukti pave. So Krishna told Mukti, you go and take the dust of Braja and apply it on your forehead. You Mukti yourself will attain Mukti. That means devotional service to Krishna is far superior to Mukti. That is what the Brajavasis will tell you. But then you will find others in Vrindavan, in Braja, because Vrindavan Braja is a spiritual place. A lot of sadhus will come there. So there are one class of people who will say that jnana or mukti is higher than bhakti. And of course, many years later, after this incident, maybe about a year back, somebody had shared one YouTube clipping of one very popular sadhu in Vrindavan. And he is speaking, and somebody is asking question and he is answering. And the person is asking him that what is the difference between Krishna and Shiva? Some people are devotees of Shiva, some people are devotees of Krishna. Everybody comes to Vrindavan, they are all devotees of Krishna, like that. What is the difference? So this sadhu, he's a very popular person, wears tilak, wears kantimala and all those kind of things. Externally, you look at him, looks like a devotee only. So he responds to this question by saying that you can call the truth, tattva, by different names. But you have to understand that ultimately the principle, the tattva is one. But the form may be many, the name may be many, but ultimately all of them are the same. You call him by the name of Shiva, you call him by the name of Krishna, you call him by the name of Durga. I have no objection. All of them are the same. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want, you may call him, but ultimately the principle is one. Like this. And in another clipping, the same person is saying, there is no difference. One person is asking, again, question to this sadhu. What is this Paramatma? To which he responds, there is no difference between Atma and Paramatma. All that difference is on the material platform. And actually on the stage of liberation, there is no difference. Atma, Paramatma, all one only. Ultimately, again, Tattva is one, that's all. So you have people like this also. Actually, such people who claim that everything is one present a very dangerous philosophy. According to them, there is no need of pleasing Krishna. Why? Because you and Krishna are non-different. So if you please yourself, that is the goal. You don't have to please Krishna separately. So it's a very dangerous philosophy that if I am pleased by drinking alcohol, then that is spiritual. I am pleased by killing people. I am a terrorist and I like to kill people. That is also spiritual. So you see how dangerous it is. You can justify anything with this. But then externally, these people will look like devotees. And they will wear tilak, they will have kantimala. And when they speak, they will speak all about Radha, Krishna, Shyama, Shyam, Kishore, Kishori, like that. Priya, Priyatam, like that. They will talk all these kind of words only. So when people hear, they will say, he is always talking of Radha and Krishna only, so what is wrong? After all, he is talking about Radha and Krishna, and he is making people chant Krishna's name. He is making people chant Radha's name. He is such a great devotee. So what is wrong in going and hearing him? Actually, although externally such people may talk about Krishna and Radharani and all that, the ultimate conclusion that they bring you to is that ultimately you and Krishna are non-different. That there is some impersonal absolute truth which is the final goal into which we have to merge, and you become that Brahman. This is the goal to which they push everybody. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he described such people. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Eita eka kalichela, nake tilaka, gale mala. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, here is a Chela, disciple of Kali, Kali Purusha. And how do you identify this Chela of Kali Purusha, this disciple of Kali? He is wearing tilak on the nose, like we are all wearing. Urdhva Pundra. He will be wearing tilak. And Gale Mala, Gale on the neck, he will be wearing Kantimala also. Externally, you cannot make him out. When he speaks, then you can make out, oh, is he a devotee or is he a Kalichela? When he speaks, does he speak of devotional service or does he present something else? So actually, the Srimad-Bhagavatam is not meant for such people. And that is why Adi Shankaracharya, he wrote his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote the commentary on the Upanishads, Vedanta Sutras. He even said, Veda Vyasa is wrong. He has made mistakes. All this he said, but he never touched the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Because Srimad-Bhagavatam, it is too tough to actually spin out any other philosophy out of the Bhagavatam. But of course, today's Mayavadis, they are far more daring than Shankaracharya himself. They will take the Srimad-Bhagavatam and they will spin a story out of that. Of course, because people also don't read the Srimad-Bhagavatam, they don't know the real content or meaning of the Bhagavatam. So they will play around with that. So Srimad-Bhagavatam is not meant for such people. Nor is Srimad-Bhagavatam meant for the common mass of people. Common mass of people, meaning people who are engaged in pursuit of sense gratification. Actually, Manu Samhita states, Prabhupada also quotes many times, that pravrittiresha bhutanam nivrittistu mahaphala. The Manu Samhita states, pravrittiresha bhutanam. For all the living entities, it is a natural inclination to engage in sense gratificatory activities. Whereas, although all the living entities are engaged in such sense gratificatory pursuit, this will not give them the highest benefit. It is not for their highest welfare. Highest welfare of the living entity is nivritti. Nivrittistu mahaphala. The fruit of nivritti, or the path of self-abnegation, the path of giving up sense gratificatory activities, is actually mahaphala. It is greatly beneficial for the living entities. So the Srimad-Bhagavatam also mentions this. The Srimad-Bhagavatam says, Loke vyavayamisha madhya seva nityahi jantor. In the 12th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, it says that Loke vyavayamisha madhya seva nityahi jantor vyavastitisteshu vivaha yajna suragrahai na tatra chodana. So the Srimad-Bhagavatam says that engaging in sense gratificatory activities is nityahi jantoho nahi tatra chodana. You don't need to encourage or to force someone, coerce someone, or convince someone to engage in sense gratificatory activities. Automatically, the living entities are attracted towards activities of sense gratification. And the core of sense gratification, the essence of sense gratification, is embodied in 4 activities. Loke vyavaya amisha madhya seva nityahi jantoho. So engaging in intoxication, gambling, illicit sex, and meat eating. These 4 activities embody the entire gamut of sense gratificatory activities. So, to engage a person in illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, and intoxication, you need not convince someone to do it. Automatically, the person is attracted towards it. So, nityahi jantoho. And nahi tatra chodana. You don't have to put an effort to encourage a person to engage in these activities. So, if this is the case, the very same Vedic scriptures engage people in these same activities. How? Through various religious performances, religious rituals. What are those religious rituals? Vyavastitisteshu vivaha yajna suragrahayir. Vivaha, marriage, is a religious ritual. It is this concept of marriage is present amongst human beings only. And marriage as a concept has come from religion. Outside of religion, there is no meaning to marriage. And whatever sanctity is there to marriage comes from religion. And then from that, legally, by law also, there is sanctity given to marriage. But if you take out religion aspect, whether you have law or no law, marriage has no sanctity. You cannot, by logic and by reasoning, you cannot establish the sanctity of marriage. So what is, in essence, marriage? Marriage is a license for people to engage in sex intercourse. Man and a woman come together, and for them to engage in sexual intercourse, that is the license given in religion for marriage. Now the question is that, especially in the modern times, you can see people are questioning the institution of marriage. Why this required? When, if you want children, if you want to have a relationship between a man and a woman, why marriage is required? Why all this ritual? Why call all the relatives, have a big function, and then undergo so many rituals? You have to call a priest, you have to conduct a fire sacrifice, so many things you have to do. Why all this? Why all this ostentation? Not required. Man and a woman like each other, go and have a live-in relationship. And if you want to have children also, you have children. It's not that if you don't get married, you won't have children. It's not like that. So, what is the need for marriage? So, if you take the religious scriptures
their sanctioning any of the activities like marriage, yajna, sacrifice, fire sacrifice. There are animal sacrifices which are mentioned in the Vedic scriptures. So the people perform those animal sacrifices and they eat the meat of the animal which is offered as the sacrificial animal in the fire sacrifice. The meat is eaten as the offering which is given in the fire sacrifice as a prasada. So to eat meat, why yajna is required? Especially in Kali Yuga, in the modern age, you can walk into any restaurant, non-veg restaurant, and eat whatever you want. You order chicken, you order mutton, you order fish, whatever you want you can order. Why take all this headache? You have to select an Amavasya, you have to go and worship Durga, and then you have to call a priest, and then only on that day you have to do all these rituals. Why go through all those things? Go to the hotel, pay a few rupees, and then you have your meat. What is there? So why the Shastras you have to follow? No need to follow. Suragrahir. And even in the Vedic scriptures, there is provision for consuming liquor. To certain devatas, you can offer liquor and you can consume it. So again, why you need the crutch of the religious scriptures? Why do you need the crutch of religion to engage in these activities? Whether it is sex, whether it is meat eating, whether it is intoxication. If you want to do it, it's not that without the religion or without the religious scriptures you cannot do it, you can do it. So actually, if you consider that these scriptural activities which are mentioned, whether it is vivaha, whether it is yajna, suragraha, whatever all these things are there, if we consider these as licenses to do those activities, then it is meaningless, it doesn't make sense. But the Bhagavatam is very straightforward. Bhagavatam smashes the nail right on its head. The Bhagavatam says, Loke vyavayamisha madhya seva nityahi jantoho. Bhagavatam could have said nityahi pumsaha. Bhagavatam could have said nityahi manavaha. It could have said that it is common, it is very commonly performed by all human beings. But no, Bhagavatam used the word jantoho. Jantu means animal. So all animals engage in these activities without restriction. For example, if you is the concept of marriage existing in animal society? There is no animal society where you will see one she donkey and he donkey. They are coming together and they are having a ritual, and one more donkey is coming and acting as a priest, and then fire sacrifice is performed. Saat phere, 2 donkeys are taking. You don't find all these things, right? No animal will undergo any marriage. Similarly, one lion is sitting in a fire sacrifices and it is offering ghee. Swaha it is doing. Why? Because it is going to hunt and kill an animal and eat. Animal sacrifice. Will a tiger or lion do? No. It will go hunt and eat whenever it wants, whenever it feels hungry. So animals don't engage in vivaha, yajna, all these kind of things. There is no restriction in the animal society. So human beings, if they engage unrestrictedly in these activities, then they are no better than animals. That is the verdict of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So you see how the Bhagavatam is saying. So then, what is the reason that the religious scriptures are talking of these activities? The Bhagavatam says, Vyavasthitis teshu vivahayajna suragrahai rasu nivrittirishta. The goal of enshrining these things in the Vedic scriptures is to gradually lead the person who is following these scriptural injunctions to engage in these activities, to gradually lead such a person towards the path of nivritti, renunciation. Restrict the activities so that gradually the person loses a taste for such activities. The goal is not to encourage the performance of such activities through sanction in the Vedic scriptures for marriage, for animal sacrifice and such other activities. That's not the goal. The goal is to restrict so that eventually you lose the taste and take up the path of nivritti. On the other hand, if you see, so the Srimad-Bhagavatam has very revolutionary thinking. Of course, in the modern day world, when you speak of scientists and all that, they will question the Vedic scriptures and they will say that all this is very antiquated thinking. This is all archaic thoughts and philosophy. They will dismiss it, saying that we have found out so many things, we have discovered so many things. And the human intelligence has evolved now. In a primitive time, when humans were less advanced, all this may have been there. Religion, religious scriptures, the rules and regulations of religion, they might have been relevant, but not today. According to the scientists, the human beings evolved from animals. The animals evolved into monkeys, monkeys evolved into Homo sapiens, and gradually, over time, the intelligence, the brain, the human, entire human, the anatomy has evolved. And so, you can see in the history over a period of time, how humans were living like animals. But gradually they became civilized. And then when the human intelligence got sufficiently evolved, when the human brain became sufficiently evolved, we developed the science. And in science we made so many discoveries, so many inventions. So now the human beings are really evolved. Now we have, because of science, we have now technology, we have aeroplanes, we have all kinds of communication devices, we have iPhones, we have iPads, we have tablets, smartphones, and whatnot. And we have now spacecrafts going into the space. So, human mind has evolved with time. And now we are so evolved that all this religion and all is meaningless. We don't need it anymore. This is how a modern day scientific person will talk. But if you look at the irony of it, what is the irony? If you look at, if you little bit analyze, according to science itself, 40,000 years ago, of course, when I was studying biology, about 30 years back, what I studied in my biology text was 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens evolved. That's what they taught. Today, if you look at Darwin's theory, they will tell, no, 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens became the last surviving species of the kind. Otherwise, Homo sapiens evolved about 60,000 to 160,000 years ago. So they shifted it. Why? Because initially they gave the theory that Homo sapiens evolved from apes 40,000 years ago. But later on, so many discoveries came from archaeological excavations and all that, which kept pushing the date back. So they came up with a new date range, not 40,000, 60,000 to 1,60,000. You know, big range you give so that anything that falls into it, it will fit into our theory. But even after that, something they have discovered which is 210,000 years old. So now they are saying this is mysterious. So they will come up with all kinds of terminology, good, nice sounding terminology. What is that? Mysterious, missing link, anomalies. Essentially, what is that? All of them are actually contradicting the Darwin's theory. So they will keep changing their theory, modifying that theory, but they don't want to deviate completely from the theory, and they don't want to declare that, yes, this theory is bekar, it is useless, it is not explaining what we are observing. They don't want to do that because they don't have an alternate theory. So they are sticking to that and keep changing it as they keep discovering anything which contradicts their theory. Okay, well, let us assume for a moment that their theory is true. So according to their theory, man evolved from apes. And before Homo sapiens evolved, what were the apes living? They were living like animals. They were hunting like animals, they were eating like animals, they were socializing like animals. It was like an animal life. Like the Srimad-Bhagavatam says, Loke vyavayami shamadya seva nityahi jantoho. engaging in unrestricted intoxication, unrestricted meat eating, unrestricted sex. This was their life. Then human beings evolved, they became civilized. Now the intelligence of the human beings has become so evolved, we don't need religion anymore. We don't need the institution of marriage. What is this all saying that intoxication is all sinful? There is nothing called sin, there is nothing called piety, there is no papa, there is no punya. You drink, you smoke, whatever you want, you do. So, the science, after evolving from animal life to human life and reaching the pinnacle of the human life, what is science bringing us to? At the end of all this progressive civilization, they give the name, they give, again, beautiful, wonderful names they will give. By progressing, this is progressive civilization. We can freely have sex, we can freely have intoxication, we can freely eat meat, whatever you want. This is progressive, this is liberal, this is secular. They will give all kinds of nice terminology. So, at the end of all this progression and liberality, what are you coming to? You are coming to the point of unrestricted intoxication, meat eating and illicit sex. So where have you come? Life has come a full circle. You are again engaging in the same activities which, according to science itself, the human beings were doing when they were animals. So again, human civilization has degraded into animal civilization. This is the result of your progression. So the Srimad-Bhagavatam is saying that don't be a jantu, don't be a dvipada pashu, don't be a two-legged animal. These activities of unrestricted loke vyavayamisha madhya seva, these are the activities of animals. So having got the human form of life, don't remain an animal. Don't remain an animal. So then what are you supposed to do? Asu nivrittirishta, you have to engage in the path of restriction, you have to engage in the path of self-restraint. And when you engage in the path of self-restraint, then you become a real human being. Otherwise, you are a jantu, you are an animal. So that's the reality. The Vedic scriptures state that what is the difference between a human being and an animal? Sometimes the human beings, they will say human being is a rational animal. But rationality is seen even in animals also sometimes. It's not unique only to human beings. So, ahara nidra bhayamaitunam che tat samanyam pasubir naranam. So, these activities of eating, sleeping, mating and defending are common to animals as well as human beings. You cannot differentiate animals and human beings by these activities. Dharmo hitesham adhiko vishesho. But dharma, religion, is something which is unique to human beings. You cannot find animals engaging in religious activity. And therefore, dharmena hinaha pasubhi samanaha. If the human being, having got a human form of life, if we don't follow religious rules and regulations, then we are no more human beings. We are as good as animals. Dvipada pashu, animals on two legs. That's all. So, the real purpose of the human form of life is achieved by following a religious way of life. And in that religious way of life also, that religious way of life is not to give a social sanction or a license to engage in the same activities of animals, which is engaging in meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex. These to give a sanction to these things, to give a social recognition to these things, that is not the purpose of religion. Religion, the purpose of religion is to ultimately bring you to the point of nivritti. Now in Kali Yuga, when all religious performances, activities have all completely degraded. In Kali Yuga, you cannot follow varnashrama dharma. Following the Vedic rules and regulations is next to impossible. So, how to follow the rules and regulations, how to follow the path of Nivritti Marga in Kali Yuga? That is the question which is relevant for all of us. We are all products of Kali Yuga. So, we need a path of Nivritti. How do we do that? So, the entire Vedic scriptures, if you see, it is very vast. It is practically impossible to read the entire Vedic scriptures in this modern day age. So that is why the modern day, forget about reading, the modern day scientists and historians, they claim that the Vedic literatures were not compiled by one person, because humanly impossible that one person can write so much literature. They say that at different points of time, different people wrote different things, and that all became collected together, and collectively this is called Vedas. But what is the reality? It is written, the entire Vedic scriptures were compiled by Vyasadeva. But again, humanly impossible. So how it was possible for Vyasadeva? Because Vyasadeva is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he could achieve such a superhuman feat, which is otherwise humanly impossible. So, the Garuda Purana itself talks about the Srimad-Bhagavatam, explaining, extolling the position of Srimad-Bhagavatam and how in Kali Yuga, that is the scripture which can lead us to the path of Nivritti. The Garuda Purana says, Arthoyam Brahma Sutranam, that the Srimad-Bhagavatam, Arthoyam Brahma Sutranam, it gives us the essence of the Vedanta Sutras, the Brahma Sutras. Because if you take the entire Vedic scriptures, Veda Vyasa, after writing all of it, he included the Upanishads also into it. And then finally he gave the Brahma Sutras or Vedanta Sutras to give the essence of the Vedic scriptures. Now the Vedanta Sutras are all in short codes. Very tough to understand them unless you are a highly acclaimed Vedic scholar. So, seeing that in Kali Yuga, Vedic scholars are impossible to find, what did Vyasadeva do? Vyasadeva gave the essence of the Vedanta Sutras in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Arthoyam Brahma Sutranam. Bharatartha Vinirnayam. The entire essence of the Mahabharata, which comprises 100,000 verses, even that also he has included in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Arthoyam Brahma Sutranam Bharatartha Vinirnayaha. And not only that, Gayatri Bhashya Rupasau, the entire essence of the Gayatri mantra, that is also there in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And Vedartha Paribrahmhitaha, the Artha of the Vedas, the meaning of the Vedas. Ultimately, after studying the entire Vedic scriptures, what is the meaning, what is the purpose behind the Vedas that you have to understand? That is also, that is completely embodied within the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And okay, Srimad-Bhagavatam, if you see, it is one of the 18 Puranas. So there are other Puranas also. So how do we understand the position of the Srimad-Bhagavatam to be different from that of the other Puranas? Purananam Samarupo Asau. So like in the four Samhitas, Rig, Yajur, Atharva and Sama. Out of these four Samhitas in the Vedas, the Sama Veda is considered to be the best. Why? Because it contains the glorification of Krishna. So therefore it is considered the best. So like the Sama Veda is considered the best amongst all the four Vedas, similarly amongst the Puranas, the Srimad-Bhagavatam is considered the supreme. And Sakshat Bhagavatoditaha, the Srimad-Bhagavatam was compiled by the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is Veda Vyasa. Dvadasha Skanda Yuktoyam, and the Srimad-Bhagavatam contains 12 cantos. Shatavicheda Samyutam, it has 335 chapters. Granto Ashtadasha Sahasraha, 18,000 verses are there. Srimad-Bhagavatabidaha, and this is called the Srimad-Bhagavatam. This is a description given in the Garuda Purana about the Srimad-Bhagavatam, how the Bhagavatam is the essence of all the Vedic scriptures. We need not study the Vedas, we need not study the Upanishads, we need not study the Vedanta Sutras, we need not study the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, we need not study any other Puranas, study only the Bhagavatam. That will give you the essence of having studied the entire Vedic scriptures. That is why in the first canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam itself says, Sarva Vedayatihasanam Saram Saram Samudhritam. The entire Vedic scriptures, the entire Itihasas, Ramayana, Mahabharata, all put together, the essence of all the scriptures, Saram Saram Samudhritam, that has been churned out, and that is presented in the form of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Again, towards the end of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, in its conclusion, the Bhagavatam says, Sarva Vedanta Saram. Sarva Vedanta Saram Srimad-Bhagavatam Ishyate. Srimad-Bhagavatam is the Sara, is the essence of the entire Vedas and the Vedanta Sutras. And not only that, the uniqueness of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Why? Because somebody may say, Srimad-Bhagavatam, if it is the essence of the Vedanta Sutras, if it is the essence of the Vedas, why should I study the Bhagavatam? I'll study the Vedanta Sutras, I'll study the Vedas. But there is one more uniqueness of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. What is that? The Srimad-Bhagavatam says, Sarva Vedanta Saram Srimad-Bhagavatam Ishyate Tad Rasamrita Triptasya Nanyat Ratihi Kvachid. Nanyatra Ratihi Kvachid. If we taste once the sweet nectar of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, if anyone tastes the sweet nectar of the Bhagavatam, once he has tasted the nectar of the Bhagavatam, Nanyatra Ratihi Kvachid, he will never develop attraction for any other Vedic literature. All other Vedic literature will appear very, very dry. Of course, if you look at the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Vedanta Sutras, Brahma Sutras, they are all extremely dry, full of only dry philosophy. But if you look at the Mahabharata, Ramayana, the different the different Puranas, some little bit of sweetness, nectar is there in that, because descriptions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there, here and there. So you will find little nectar in that. But if once you read the Srimad-Bhagavatam, once you have tasted the nectar of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, then nothing else will appeal to you. No other literature will appeal to you. That is the unique feature of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. But to taste that nectar of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, if you go and hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam, even if that person is wearing tilak on the forehead and wearing kantimala, and he is residing in Vrindavan Dham, and he has taken a vow never to step out of Vrindavan Dham, and he has many, many followers who all go and follow him, and he will tell you to chant the name of Krishna and Radha only. But if he is talking, if he is a Kali Chela, if he is talking about oneness of yours with the Supreme Brahman, and according to him, Krishna, Rama, and Shiva, Durga, all of them are the same. From such people, if you hear, you will not taste the nectar of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. You will not have access to that. You will have access to that nectar of the Srimad-Bhagavatam only when you approach an unadulterated, pure devotee of Krishna like Srila Prabhupada. When you read the Srimad-Bhagavatam, when you study the Srimad-Bhagavatam under a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, then that you will start tasting that sweet nectar. And once you taste that sweet nectar of Srimad-Bhagavatam, no other literature will appeal to you. Everything will appear dry. You will not be able to read any other literature. It's impossible. So, the Srimad-Bhagavatam, when we approach, first is the qualification of the person who is hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam, like it is mentioned in today's verse. Sasamhitam bhagavatim kritvanakaramya chatmajam sukamadhyapayamasa nivritti niratam munihi. Vedavyasa taught the Srimad-Bhagavatam to his son, Sukadeva Goswami, because like father, like son, when the father is a great personality, it is expected that the son will also be great. So, Vyasadeva's son, he should not be a normal person, he should be somebody exalted. So, Sukadeva Goswami, right from the time he was within the womb of his mother, he was nivritti niratam. He was already engaged in self-realization. He was not engaged in pravritti marga. He was not engaged in loke vyavayami shamadhya seva. He was not interested in sense gratificatory pursuits. So, when he heard the Srimad-Bhagavatam, it appealed to him. So, that's the unique nature of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So, for a person, exalted person like Shukadeva Goswami, who is already engaged in self-realization, nivritti niratam munihi, and he is a muni, even he became attracted to study the Srimad-Bhagavatam. That in itself is a wonderful story. How exactly Shukadeva Goswami, although he was such an exalted personality, he was a muni, he was nivritti nirata, he was already on the path of nivritti. Even he, how could he become attracted to Srimad-Bhagavatam? What is so unique about this? That is the speciality of Srimad-Bhagavatam, that it can attract even such people. And so that we will see in the following verses, how Shukadeva Goswami became attracted to Srimad-Bhagavatam. That itself is a wonderful pastime. So, for such people who are engaged in the path of nivritti, Srimad-Bhagavatam is actually meant for such people. So, at the same time, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, although the Srimad-Bhagavatam is especially meant for the Paramahamsas, nivritti niratam muni, people like Shukadeva Goswami, or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, although the Bhagavatam is meant for such people, not for people who are on the path of pravritti marga, still it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification, but even such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. So even such people who are engaged in meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, their whole life is revolving around this. Even such people, if they hear the Srimad-Bhagavatam from Srila Prabhupada, what will happen? Their heart will transform. And what greater example, what greater proof can be there for this statement than Srila Prabhupada himself? Srila Prabhupada went to the West. When Srila Prabhupada went to the US, what did he carry with him? He did not carry Upanishads. He did not carry the Vedanta Sutra. He did not carry Bhagavad Gita. Not even Bhagavad Gita was there with Prabhupada. Prabhupada carried the first two cantos of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And with that, Prabhupada started his preaching. And what was the result? Even hippies who were engaged in meat eating, intoxication, they were into drugs, they were into illicit sex, they were into all sorts of sinful activities. Even such people's hearts became transformed and they gave up all these activities, shaved up their heads and became Vaishnavas. What more proof do you need? That this is the power of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. That the Srimad-Bhagavatam is the essence of the Vedic scriptures and it can transform the hearts of even the most degraded people, animalistic people of Kali Yuga who are engaged in pravritti. Loke vyavayami shamadhya seva. This is their life. Their whole life's purpose is this only, living like an animal. And such people's hearts is transformed and diverted to the real path of nivritti. Nivritti marga, people have been brought into that. So this is the power of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So therefore, we should study the Srimad-Bhagavatam under the aegis of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada, and we accept Srila Prabhupada as our Diksha Guru and learn the study the Srimad-Bhagavatam under him. Then we can taste the nectar of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which will make every other literature pale into insignificance and which will transform our hearts on the path of Nivritti Marga. So I'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.